Is it possible to buy a house for $200?
Two guys take on real estate.
Hey guys, Flippin' Landlord Ninja here with Two Guys Take on Real Estate. Do me a favor, like and subscribe and share this with another friend. Okay, so what are we talking about? A house for $200. That sounds ridiculous, Matt. What are you talking about? Well, it is possible. And this is something called a foreclosure auction. And there's two different types of states generally, judicial and non-judicial. Judicial kind of, for instance, like Connecticut, and a non-judicial like Massachusetts. We happen to be actually right in between, so we've actually bought properties in both states on both types of auctions. But today I'm going to talk about Massachusetts and the non-judicial auctions. And what that is basically the owner of the property, they actually stopped paying the bank, and the bank is now enforcing their lien. And so they have what's called a foreclosure auction where they try to recoup their losses. Now, often this happens in Massachusetts at the property. You can also see them sometimes at the courthouse or the town hall, whatever it might be. But the one we're talking about today actually happened at the property. And essentially, those will be held by third-party auctioneers, and you generally show up, and you generally have to have a cashier's check or whatever it might be. If you're putting it in a company's name, you're going to want to have what's called a power of attorney or a POA. That is important to make sure that you're assigning it into the right entity for your legal protection. I'll talk to a lawyer to see what the best structure for you is, but I highly recommend looking at some kind of legal entity to protect yourself. And now, foreclosures aren't for the faint of heart. So typically you don't get in these properties, and in this case, we didn't get in at all. I showed up at this beautiful house, and I'll kind of show you some walkthrough videos here, and we only got to see the exterior. So I saw that the roof was in disrepair. It was a two-family house, and the siding was needing some work. It definitely needed a lot of work. So I kind of went about doing my normal due diligence, and I had checked to see if there's any taxes owed, any water or sewer owed, all that kind of stuff. Always do your due diligence. And then I start working on what's called an ARV, or after repair value, and trying to figure out what it's worth. So I went through all that due diligence, came up with a rough number at the time. I believe it was around $150,000, something like that. And then I back out my holding costs, I back out any cost of money and closing costs, and then of course figuring out a rehab. And since you're not getting into these properties, that's really hard number to come up with. So you kind of have to wing it, and based on looking at the exterior, I kind of considered that it needed a lot of work. So based on kind of per square foot, I had a high number based on the contractors I work with in the area, what they normally charge me. And so I kind of took that into consideration, and then I came up with a number that I was willing to bid, my maximum allowable offer that I was willing to go up to. And I think that's really important. You figure that number and you don't go above it. I think I see all too often at these auctions, people start getting emotional, the bidding starts going back and forth, and I see that things get bid up way too quickly, especially right now where people feel that there's no inventory out there, and so they just want a house, they want a project, whatever it is, they're getting emotional, they're buying and the numbers are going crazy. I was just at an auction the other day, and my number was like, I think I was willing to bid $150, and it went for over $200,000 to a flipper. And when I look at the numbers, knowing what their costs would be, even if they do all the rehab themselves, they're looking at making maybe a 10% return. And there's so much risk. They couldn't get inside. There's actually an occupant in the house. They're going to have to work on getting that person out. They don't know how long that could take. So there's a lot of risk there. So you really need to be careful. Sticking to your numbers is one of the most crucial things to a foreclosure auction, so you don't get, kind of catch a falling knife and get in trouble. So once again, so this auction, I actually showed up on time. I always show up actually a little bit early so I can do my due diligence thoroughly. And lo and behold, no one showed up. I was ecstatic. So I was like, all right, great. No one showed up. I have a high success rate of winning. And the auction kind of started, and they actually came out and said, okay, $100. And I was like, my jaw dropped. I was like, no way. So luckily, you know, through all the rigmarole, I actually was able to buy the property for $200. Now, that's great. But, I mean, it needed a roof, a massive trash out, it needed plumbing, electrical. So this wasn't just $200, it was also a lot of work. The good news is we were able to actually flip the house after just popping a roof on and trashing it out. We kind of basically wholetailed it to an investor who was going to renovate it themselves. Once again, this isn't, you know, a normal procedure. I've only seen this happen a few times. You know, houses going for this cheap, but it does happen. And I think generally what my take on from, you know, talking to the auctioneers, talking all that kind of stuff, that they're seeing that, you know, sometimes the banks, based on the type of insurance they have, they are willing to let it go basically before foreclosure or after foreclosure. It depends if, you know, how they actually get paid back from the insurance company. That's at least what I'm being told. I don't know what exactly the criteria the banks have for this. Honestly, I think someone maybe made a mistake. They did triple check. They had called the attorneys and made sure that there was not a mistake happening. It actually took about 45 minutes to actually do all the paperwork because they were very concerned that this was a mistake. Lo and behold, there was another auction that happened maybe a week or two prior that went for about the same price. So it's not unheard of, but more often than not, I see things, you know, going for more reasonable numbers, and often people right now especially are showing up and bidding that up. So once again, if someone had showed up, it clearly would have gone much higher. My actual maximum allowable offer or bid was $50,000. So I was willing to go up more. I'm sure another investor or flipper showing up would have done the same thing. So I just kind of lucked out in this case that no one showed up, and so I won it for $200. Once again, I really recommend that you do your due diligence. Be careful. One thing I would like to mention is I really think that there's a big opportunity coming in the near future where we're going to see a lot more foreclosure auctions coming. I talk to the auctioneers all the time, and they're telling me there's stacks and stacks and stacks of foreclosures that are kind of getting pent up. And most of these are actually vacant properties. But I know right now there's a lot of concern with the auctioneers and the title companies and the banks that, given the moratoriums on foreclosures and all the different laws and the different administration stuff from the CDC and all that kind of stuff, where everything's going to kind of fall in place. So they're all kind of very, you know, being very tenuous as to actually pushing things forward. But at some point, as this kind of builds up, the snowball, so to speak, builds up, eventually it's going to run down the hill. And I think it's going to be a great opportunity for a lot of people. But as always, you need to do your due diligence and be very, very cautious, because you do not want to get in trouble. You do not want to find something where you can't get out of it. So as always, please, you know, make sure you take your time. If you'd like to see a little bit more about foreclosures, check out this video here that we have. And as always, thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day.